Hey, it's Athena at Gluten Freeology, where I make gluten-free versions of your favorite comfort foods and some healthy stuff too. I was super excited when I found these gluten-free Manicotti noodles in Mom's Organic Market. I've had gluten sensitivity for over a decade, and it's hard to find this type of variety, so I absolutely had to try this. I ended up using a box of the noodles, and I decided to make it like I make my lasagna, but instead of beef, I'm doing chicken. So I chopped up half of a large onion, about 4 garlic cloves, and 1 large bell pepper. You want to chop them up fine enough just because you're going to put this through a makeshift piping bag later. So just like there's a lot of prep when you're making lasagna, it's the same for manicotti noodles. Once you have your veggies finely chopped, then you can start to prep your chicken. So if I had to do this all over again, I would just go ahead and chop up the chicken, put it in a food processor just so that it comes out like a ground meat instead of cooking it in slices like I've done here. But either way, you want your chicken when it's done cooking to be thin enough that it can fit through a piping bag, because you're going to need to use that in order to stuff your manicotti noodles. So I'm seasoning the chicken with salt and pepper, onion and garlic powder, paprika, and some Italian seasoning. And then I'm gonna go in and do the same with my veggies, sauteing them in olive oil, onion and garlic powder, paprika, and Italian seasoning. And then you want to let this cook on the stove for about 5 to 7 minutes until it's softened. Once your veggies have softened, you want to go ahead and add in your chicken, and you want to let the chicken cook for about 5 to 7 minutes per side on medium heat. And while that's going on the stove, you want to prep your ricotta mixture. So I'm chopping up some fresh parsley. I like whole milk ricotta, and I'm only using 1 egg, and then adding in the parsley, and then going in with some chili pepper flakes. And you want to stir that until everything is thoroughly combined like this. Now that your chicken is finished cooking, this part was probably one of the more tedious parts of the process. You literally have to shred the chicken until it's nice and thin like this. And then I added just a little bit of marinara sauce to the chicken and veggies. And I'm gonna place this in a piping bag later. So there's literally no need to buy a professional piping bag. You just take a gallon plastic bag and stuff it with your ricotta cheese mix, and make sure you leave a little bit of space about the size of a tiny triangle. And then you also want to do the same thing for your chicken and veggie mix. The hole that you place should not be larger than the holes for your manicotti. I followed the instructions on the box, boiling for about 4 minutes. And This was my second attempt at filling the manicotti. I had watched some videos where people held them sideways in their hands. That was an epic fail. So luckily for me, they do stand up on their own, whether in the sauce or on the plate by themselves. I wanted to start with the ricotta cheese mix first. So I filled it with ricotta cheese first, and then I followed up with the chicken mix. I made the hole a little bit too big for the chicken mixture, but I made it work anyway. This is really tedious. This is not sped up at all. I just wanted you to get a feel for how patient you have to be. But once I got the hang of it, it was just a matter of getting it done. So I started with ricotta, then I went in with a layer of chicken, and then of course you need to push it down as far as possible. And then once I was satisfied with the amount of chicken in the center, I topped it off with more ricotta cheese at the end, like so. And it was basically just rinse and repeat until I was finished with the bottom layer. So the same way you do with lasagna, you want to pour marinara sauce on the bottom and then layer your first batch of stuffed manicotti noodles, and then top that with more marinara sauce, and then you can go in with mozzarella cheese. You can also add Parmesan if you like, but I just decided to stick with mozzarella cheese for this one. And so this is the final layer that's gonna go on the top, doing the same thing as before, starting with ricotta cheese, then going in with the chicken mix, and then topping it back off with more of the ricotta cheese. And the great thing is that everything stays nicely and neatly inside of the shells. I didn't have any issues with them falling out when I went to go place them on top of the other layers of manicotti. And so once you layer the final top layer, you go back in with the rest of the marinara, and you want to add about 1/4 cup of water along the sides of this, and then whatever is remaining for your ricotta cheese, go ahead and add that. There's no need of saving that. You can't use it for anything else. And get crazy with the cheese. I made sure the top layer was fully covered like so. And then I baked it at 350 degrees for 30 minutes, and then I I broiled it on low until it was nice and golden brown, and this came out absolutely delicious. You have to try this recipe. What I loved about these manicotti noodles is they seem to work out much better than the gluten-free lasagna noodles that I buy. But it's still a tedious process, but the ending effect was absolutely worth it. I will definitely be making this again.